So I'm going to ask that with the exception of our presenters today, that you please mute especially your audio. You can, if you want to keep your video on, that's okay. We don't necessarily need that, but we really need for your audio to be on mute so that we don't have audio issues. And so I want to welcome everybody to our very, very first webinar series. This is going to be one of a series, I believe so. And we are so excited that you responded to us. We've had an overwhelming response to the invitation to participate in this discussion on dealing with mental health as pertains to COVID-19. We're aware that with COVID-19, that has really affected us in multiple ways. I believe everybody has been impacted in a certain way, but most of us, if not all of us, have had to shelter in place. And you've had to have your kids home with you. If you have kids, your college-age kids with you at home. And most people, I'm sure, are teleworking or are not able to work at all. And so we are aware that this has had an impact on globally, not just on us, but on pretty much everybody across the globe. And so I want to just acknowledge your response, because this is you attesting to the idea that we need to support each other through this process. And so, and this is a very targeted webinar because, as you know, ethnic minorities, racial minorities, marginalized populations are less likely to seek mental health services, even when they're struggling. And there's even a problem with just acknowledging that we have some challenges in these areas. And so it can be very difficult to address issues that we don't acknowledge. And so I want to applaud all of you for showing up so that we can have an open discussion, an honest discussion about how we're dealing with mental health issues, especially as African people, as people of African descent. Because there's not enough attention to populations like us in terms of strategies of coping and managing the challenges we face. And so I want us to get into our conversations about this. I will go ahead and introduce myself as we continue today. I'm Lilian Odera. I'm a psychologist, and I'll be your host today. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've worked in college health for about 15 years now. My entire career, my most recent stint was at Towson University in the Towson area. And prior to that, I was in Florida, at Florida International University. So I've been in the college health and mental health sector for a long time. And so I'm very familiar. I know some of you have college age kids in your house, so I deal with them quite a bit. So right now, I'm the director of the Counseling Center at Salisbury University, which is part of the University System of Maryland. And that's in Salisbury on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, if you're familiar with the Northeast part of the country. So I do plenty of faith-based work, community outreach, addressing the intersection of faith and mental health issues, and spirituality, as well as challenges, especially generational issues with parents and kids and grandkids and all those cultural differences that we face. And so how we're going to do this today is, if you have not, you're not familiar with Zoom, we have a chat box at the bottom bar of your screen. You can post questions as we go along. Most of you submitted a lot of questions to us. And we're going to focus on those. Our presenters today are going to address those questions that you presented already. But if you have additional questions as we talk about the expertise of our presenters, you may get a question may come up that you want addressed. You can put that on the chat box, and we'll do our best to respond to those as well. We ask that we be respectful with our questions. We are mental health professionals, so there may be questions that you pose to us that are beyond the scope of our expertise, so we may not be able to address that. We do not operate with hearsay and rumors. We don't draw our information from blogs. We use peer-reviewed sources to back up the work we are presenting. So if you ask us a question that's beyond the scope of our work, if we give you our opinion, we will let you know that is our personal opinion. but we will not be quoting any kind of agency and saying that this is what they're saying. If it's rumors, it's rumors. And so we're going to stay away from answering questions that are beyond the scope of what we can actually address. Okay. So we ask again, for those of you who've just arrived, that please you remain on mute for the duration of the webinar. You can enable your video if you want us to see your beautiful faces, but we ask that your audio be on mute so that we don't have any interference. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker today. Our first speaker is Ruth Mbugua-Opiyo, and Ruth is a licensed professional counselor in Texas and recently became licensed in providing telehealth services in Florida and California. Her background is in marriage and family counseling, but she primarily works in mental health. She has experience working in domestic violence, psychiatric hospitals, outpatient clinics, residential centers, and crisis centers as well. So she's currently working part-time with a telehealth company in the Sugar Land, Houston area, and also part-time in private practice. And she works with children, adolescents, adults, and families. Ruth is married and has 3 kids, 2 who are in college and 1 in high school. So she's probably going to be able to address some of the concerns that you may have around those issues. So she's going to tackle the question around helping children to cope with COVID-19 and how to manage your kids at home for really an indefinite period of time, how to manage, you're working in the home, the kids are in the house, how do you keep them entertained and engaged, and how do you maintain a healthy atmosphere for the entire family. So without much ado, I'm going to hand over to Ruth to just get us started with the discussion.
Thank you, Lilian. I appreciate you, and welcome everybody to this forum for us to be able to talk about some of the things that we are dealing with as parents. As Lilian spoke about, I work with families and children, and I definitely wanted to be able to address those concerns that you have at home, having to work when your children are home, dealing with children's mental health issues, dealing with your own mental health issues while you're home with your children. These are obviously unprecedented times for each and every one of us, here in the States, but overseas, everywhere around the world. We're all trying to figure out how to best work with in these new times. So I'm going to start off by just giving a couple of definitions. So when we talk about children, I just want to speak about who I will be addressing about today. So for me, children is anybody who you gave birth to, or you adopted, or and see if I can share a document with you. And if I cannot, then I will not be sharing that document with you. But hopefully I can. And the document basically is having us ask, when should we really start to get concerned that maybe COVID is probably affecting us a lot within our families, okay? So I'm going to share here, and hopefully everybody will be able to see it. Give me a quick second to just get that going. So some of the things that I'm looking for when I hear that people are anxious around this time is the frequency and intensity of substance use. So if you're seeing yourself maybe using alcohol more, maybe you've got a teenager in the home and you're noticing that they're using alcohol more, or they're using other illegal substances, that's definitely something that should concern you. They're using prescribed more medication that they're supposed to be using. They're having difficulty sleeping. They're eating a lot more, or maybe they're not even eating at all. They're having trouble paying attention. They're worried. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling very alone and isolated. One thing that I typically will look for is a lot of conflict within the home. So I'm being very argumentative and confrontational with my friends and my family. Maybe I'm even engaging in self-harming behaviors like cutting myself, burning myself. I've stopped attending to my personal care. All of these are things that you should definitely be concerned about, that there is something going on in the mental health of whether it's your children or yourself. So I'm going to address what we can typically do to help us deal with that. So something that I use with my clients is an acronym. It's SPIRE, and I'm going to share that with you. Um, and SPIRE typically stands for a number of different things. So SPIRE here stands for spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. The thing about difficult times is that they force us to look at what is some good that can come out of them. What are some things that I could be doing? Maybe in the past I wasn't able to do. So here's a good question for you is what are you doing spiritually to take care of yourself? Are you making sure that you're praying, that you are staying connected to God, that you are engaging in those spiritual practices that keep you feeling that oneness in your spiritual walk? But how this translates in our relationship with our children is this is a great opportunity as parents to actually take care of the spiritual needs of our children. When we talk about anxiety, this is a time that we can actually talk to our kids about how does prayer help us manage um, how does prayer help us manage anxiety? How does prayer, talking to God, help us recognize that we have somebody who is who has control? We might not have control, but God has control. So I hope that this becomes an opportunity for you to not just take care of your own spiritual needs, but to actually take care of the spiritual needs of your children. So this is a great time for you to be praying with your children, reading the Bible with your children. Some of you work very hard. You're gone all day. You come home late. You probably have never prayed with your children, probably have never read the Bible with them. And this becomes an opportunity for you to do that. What about physically? Are you exercising? Are you taking care of your own physical needs? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping a minimum of 8 to 10 hours? Are you making sure that you are taking care of your physical bodies? And then how that translates in your relationship with your children. Are you exercising with your children? Are you encouraging them to get out and play and move and dance? And this is a great time to actually engage your children in some kind of physical activity. So become creative, figure out what your kids enjoy doing, and join them. We know, and again, I loved what Lilian said, that we are talking about things that are proven. So physical exercise has been shown to really give better mental health outcomes to people who are struggling with anxiety and depression and bipolar and so on and so forth. So making sure that you're taking care of those physical needs is key. What about intellectually? How can you engage your children? So some of us are being forced to do homework with our children, something that maybe you didn't have to do before. And not just homework, actually, really you're teaching, you're having to teach them. So come up with a schedule, one that you probably put on a poster board, divide it into blocks, make sure that those blocks take into account the age of your child. So you don't want a 5-year-old sitting at a table doing schoolwork for 3 hours, right? A college kid might be able to do that, but definitely not a younger child. So come up with a good schedule that works developmentally for your child. Make sure that there are lots of breaks between blocks. So during those breaks, you can get a snack, you can go have some exercise, you can go attend to something else, play with a pet, something that actually takes you away, gives your brain a break, and then get back to the intellectual work that you need to get back to. This is an opportunity for you to actually model good behaviors with your children. You know, if you can sit at the dinner table together and while they're doing their schoolwork, you're on your phone calls or your meetings and you're taking care of your business. It's modeling for children how to take care of those intellectual needs. Relational. Make sure that you're staying connected to other people. We are, as Africans especially, we're very relational. Community is important to us. So coffee dates, stay connected to people. And again, research shows us that people who have got strong connections tend to have better mental health outcomes. And then, of course, emotional. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself emotionally. Talk about how you're feeling. Engage your friends in talking about what's going on for you. And allow your children to do the same. Recognize that children will need to talk about the fact that they feel very overwhelmed during this time, and that's okay. You know, those are just feelings. And just because we have feelings are not good or bad. They're just an expression of how we are feeling. So this becomes a great time for you to attend to each other's emotional needs. Now, granted, some of you might be looking at your children and say, oh, this is beyond just a little bit of anxiety. My child is really depressed, or my anxious, or my child is having behavioral issues that I think are beyond the scope of what I can do at home. For those of you who are working and are insured, I want to just remind you that you can always flip the backside of your cards, look up that phone number, your insurance cards that is, and reach out to your insurance company and seek a mental health professional. And you can be very specific as to what you need. I need a therapist who can work with children this age. These are the symptoms that they're dealing with. And if you can't get through to your insurance by phone, please use online. Go to their website, seek a therapist in your area. And if you want somebody close by, you can make sure you choose somebody who's close by so that after all of this is over, you can actually go and see them physically in their offices. A lot of money. I see somebody said they can't hear me, so I hope that that helps. If you feel like you cannot afford to pay a therapist or you don't have insurance, still reach out to the therapist, because a lot of people will be willing to do lowered payment options or even do some pro bono work. So please make sure that you're taking care of your mental health and that of your children. Okay. I'm going to open it up to my co-panelists if they want to add anything as it pertains to children and to families and taking care of them before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job there. And one of the things I'd just like to add is that you are setting as the parent in the home, you are setting the pace and the atmosphere in the home. And many children will not remember, because we are going to go through this, it's going to go away. It's a storm, it will go away. But they will not, what the children will remember is how they felt during this time. What was the atmosphere in the time when you are going through this particular crisis? So when like when the kids are at home, running all over each other and things like that, and then of course maybe you're stressed yourself because a big change for you as well. You want to set the atmosphere that my children realize that although there was a lot of uncertainty, that I still felt safe at home, and that will have to come from you as the parent. And and because we are rooted in our spirituality, that's a big thing which our sister here was talking about, your spiritual root, staying focused that Jesus is in the boat with you. You're not going through this alone.
Maybe I can just share something funny about the kids that just a few minutes ago, as you were saying, Dr. Sarah, I checked in with my son and I asked him, he's our oldest, if he's stressed out about anything with what's going on. And his answer was, there's a pandemic going on. Why is the teacher giving me homework? So yeah, their perspective is very different. He's like, does the teacher know that people are passing away? And here they are telling me to have my project in on Monday. So kids have a sense of humor about what's going on, and that's okay. I think it's okay to take that tact with them when they need to laugh.
Mm-hmm. All right. Ruth, did you have any final thoughts before we shift to something else?
Well, a final thought that I wanted to share is recognizing, as has been said before, that parents actually determine the anxiety in the home. So teaching our families that we have certain things that are within our control and other things that are not within our control. What we call the locus of control, right? So what do I have within my control? Within my control, I can make sure that we're washing our hands. I can make sure that I'm being kind to my spouse. I'm being kind to my children. That the dog gets a bath. Those are things that I have under my control. What I don't have under control is when you will go back to school. You know, whether how long I will have my job. So being able to communicate to our children, you know what, these are the things that we do have under our control, and we're going to take care of those things. The things that are outside of our control, those are where that's where faith comes in. That's where I can say, okay, Lord, you walk with us during this journey. Help us find a new job when all of this is over, and so on and so forth. So teaching children to recognize that it's not just chaos, right? There is hope at the end of the day. I might not have all the answers, but the things that I do have under control, I am going to do a good job taking care of.
All right. I'm going to encourage people, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll have a little bit of time at the end for some general questions. We will probably not be able to respond to all the questions that people have, but we're going to cover as many as we can. And so we try to cluster the questions into common areas so that we can respond to those. So I'm going to just shift us a little bit to a different conversation. I'm going to invite our next speaker, Dr. Sarah Gatumu, and Dr. Sarah is a board certified psychiatrist. Actually, she's triple board certified in child and adolescent psychiatry, as well as adult psychiatry and addiction medicine. So she currently works in an inpatient facility in a rural community in Western Pennsylvania. Dr. Sarah has worked in crisis centers, outpatient clinics, and in drug and alcohol rehabilitation facilities, mainly doing psychiatric evaluation and medication management. So she also sees some patients for long-term psychotherapy and also some clients for life coaching. She is married and she also has college-age children, so she can also comment on some of the concerns that may arise there. So she's going to talk about some of the fear and the anxiety we may have about job security, income loss, financial strain, especially from a Christian perspective. When some of us, there's so much uncertainty. There are a lot of income folks in our midst who may not be able to have the benefit of teleworking and functioning and maintain a home and take care of our expenses. So she'll also address whether she could do that right now, actually, some of the concerns that we may have even within the community about using psychotropic medication. Because some of us deal with conditions or people we know that may need not just therapy, but may need medication as well. So she's going to address that in terms of our receptiveness, especially those of us who have a faith base, and may be hesitant to integrate medication in psychiatric treatment. Welcome, Sarah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Odera. One of the most fascinating things about our bodies is that God made it so that our bodies can heal themselves. And what we need to do is support our bodies so that they can do what they're supposed to do. If you cut yourself when you're cutting your cabbage, you know, you feel pain, which tells you, okay, do this, it's time to take care of that little place. And soon you find that the body it begins to heal itself. It scars over, and very soon you even forget about all of that. So the body was made in an environment, God knew all of this was going to happen. And so he equipped the body with white blood cells, T cells, lymphatic system, all of that, so that it can heal itself. So before a stress that happens to the body, if the body is at its optimal function, then we're able to bounce back faster than if the body is not already functioning in an optimal situation. So when it comes to taking your vitamins and doing your exercises, making sure you're sleeping well, all of that is very, very important to equip the body to do what it can do if it's given the right environment. So then comes a stress. Stress is going to happen. It is going to happen to us at different times, no matter what. So the baseline from which we are is very important to determine how low we are going to go as a result of the stress that we are going through. And the higher we are with regards to protecting ourselves and positioning ourselves in a position of optimal health, it makes it that the stresses don't bring us as low as if we were not optimal. So here comes COVID-19. We heard about it. It started, in Wuhan around November, and we all heard about it, and until it came here, and now it's on its way out. So the storm will pass, but the question is, what's going to end up happening to us after the storm has passed? And during the time that right now we're going through the storm, and it will pass. But how is it going to leave us? And that's where the fear and the anxiety comes in. And one of the things I tell the people that I work with is, and usually by the time they come to see me, they are at a really, really low point, and the storm outside and inside is too bad. So I really work on helping people to first of all calm the storm inside them, so that they can be able to deal with the storm outside, because they will still go back home and face whatever it is that they have to face. So when it comes to job loss and anxiety related to finances and things like that, when you are so anxious, you're not able to ask yourself the right questions. What can I do now? This has happened. What can I do now? The fear is going to make you focus on your weakness rather than your strength. When you're focusing on things that everything is happening, but you're not asking yourself, what can I do now? How have you overcome other stresses before? This is not the first stress you've gone through, and there will still be others even after this one. But how have I overcome the ones in the past? All of us are in this country. We have gone through situations. Everybody here has a story of stress. We have done it before. And when you focus on the fact that you're not alone when you're facing this particular situation, God has brought you through other storms before. He will take you through this one also. And today I was listening to somebody who talked about the lepers. Remember the lepers? They had been thrown outside. They couldn't go into the city, and so they were supposed to stay outside there and die. So instead of saying, hey, what are we going to do? They said they're going to go to that city of Assyria, and whatever happens, happens. So what it brought out of them was let us look for new territories or new ways of facing the challenges that we have already faced before. Let us look for a different career, a different right now look at the careers that were able to resist the storm. Maybe you need to find to train yourself in a storm resistant career that will manage, it will help you in the next storm that you're going to face. So this is a time for looking at not what you have lost or what you're losing, but what you still have. The attitude of gratitude, it will help you to calm the storm inside so that you can be able to see what options are available for you. And when you're in a place of rest, then you can make good decisions. When you're in a place of unrest, you'll make very bad decisions. Then comes the issue of medication. By the time people come to see me, most of them have reached a place where they need medication. And the most difficult people I have to deal with are Christians, because they say that, you know, this is a spiritual attack, the demons are here. And I'm not saying that the demons are not here and all of that. I'm saying that there is a part for you to for the medication and prayer. I personally pray. Prayer is very, very important. And when I am I don't offer it, but when I am invited by the patient to pray with them, I do. But I don't like initiate it. But so it's not something that you just say it's prayers only, or you know, it goes hand in hand. Like I had a person who was really psychotic, and everything was, there was a lot of paranoia going on. Somebody is poisoning this, that, and the other, and they said they don't want medicine, that's part of the poison. So of course we had to intervene and step in and make decisions against the person's will and medicate them. Now this is about 5 weeks later, the person is much better, you know, from a mental health standpoint. And then she said she wants to get off the medication, and I'm like, it's too soon. It's too soon. At least give yourself a minimum of 12 months when you're not having symptoms, and then work with your provider and to get off the medications. But God gave us the wisdom. If God didn't want us to use medications, he wouldn't have given us the wisdom. You know, just like how God gave us the wisdom to use cars and to do surgery and things like that. All of this is wisdom, and it's not mutually exclusive that because I am a Christian, I believe in, I do, but also the medicine, it helps. And again, remember what I said at the beginning, that our bodies were meant to heal themselves. And if they need a little help, the medication will help. And again, optimizing all the resources that your body has so that you can be the best that you're supposed to experience in this world. And remember that we are, you know, we have the spirit man, he is whole. But right now, my spirit is dwelling in this body, and I need to take care of this body. If the body needs glasses, I put glasses, you know, just to optimize my experience as a human being in this body. And taking medication, if it's needed, with the supervision from your provider, it's actually very, very helpful, and it will help you get over the depression or the anxiety. Our sister here, Ruth, had talked about some of the symptoms that will make somebody know that now it's time to get in and get help. And if the therapy by itself is not working, a low dose of medications, or if they need higher doses of, or if they are a danger to themselves or other people, then they need to be in an inpatient setting. All of that is tools that God has given us to use so that we can experience this world in the optimal way. So as far as job losses, yes, it's going to happen. And the question is, who am I becoming as a result of what I'm going through? This has happened. I accept it, and there is something that I am equipped to be able to do. The anxiety will focus me on in the wrong direction. But as I calm myself down, and I think one of our speakers will talk about, you know, meditation and what you're focusing on. As I calm my inside, then I can be able to see better what options I have, which new territories I can achieve. And I'd like to ask the others if they want to step in. It's okay.
I think one thing I want to add to that, which Dr. Sarah touched on, is looking at our symptoms the same way we look at physical health symptoms. We all wear glasses, we wear contacts, we take medication for high blood pressure, we take medication for diabetes. And you have to look at depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, those mental health symptoms the same way as we take our physical health. We still have to take it seriously and medicate ourselves if we need to in order to start feeling better. The same way you manage your high blood pressure, you need to manage your depressive symptoms as well.
I too wanted to add on to what Dr. Sarah said, which is it is okay to grieve. You know, a loss of a job is a difficult thing. And there is nothing wrong with recognizing that there is a loss and allowing yourself to cry, to just grieve that loss. And this is not a loss that only you are dealing with. A lot of people, not just here in the States, but around the world are dealing with. So it's okay to normalize that loss causes grief. I think what Dr. Sarah was also alluding to is that after grief, we will be able to bounce back. We will be able to determine what are the next steps. So we grieve, but with hope. I think that's the point here, is that are we sad that we're losing our jobs, or that we have less hours that we're working, or that we have less money in the bank?
Ruth, we missed you. We lost your audio there.
And I don't know where you lost me, so I'm not sure where.
Sorry, whatever the last sentence it is that you said, we missed that.
Okay. And I think that my last sentence was just that it is okay for us to grieve and to recognize that as we lean on our spirituality, we can have hope that better days will come. But right now, it's okay to grieve, recognizing.
Absolutely. There is lots of ways, and for a number of you that I see who called in to the webinar today, are people with a faith base, and run to the foot of the cross. Run to Jesus. If that is where you get anchored, that's where you get grounded. I have, this is going to be my one moment to kind of highlight some of my work. I've written a book about dancing in the storm, because I think my entire life story has been dancing in the storm. And there's something so powerful about picking yourself up and lifting up praise and worship to God in the midst of the storm, not after the storm, while you're smack in the middle of it. There's such strength and resiliency that is built when you're able to encourage yourself, just like David did when he had lost everything. You know, when his property, his wives, everybody was gone, he encouraged himself in the Lord. So those of you on the line who are people of faith, this COVID-19 experience did not surprise God. He was there before time began, and he knew this was coming. So I would encourage you to go to that thing that anchors you. And if that is your faith in God, go there and bring it to God. God will carry you through this. And I know Julia is going to talk later about coping, but surround yourself with people who will encourage you. People who will tell you that they walk with you, they will journey with you. Pull yourself back from the people who are doomsday sayers, you know, people who are just very catastrophic in the way they are speaking, because they will just pull you down farther. But find a ray of sunshine every day. You know, when you're going on social media, find those things that uplift you, and you'll be surprised as you build the resilience and the strength inward, you will find the strength and the resilience on the outward, and God will show you where to go. This is another loss. And like Dr. Sarah mentioned, I will, as long as we're on the face of this earth, there will be another challenge that will come. And as you build a toolbox of ways of working through the storm and journeying through the storm with your head up, watch what God can do. God is a miracle working God. And I'm persuaded that even as you press on through a season where you don't see to the left, to the right, to the east and the west, you're like, how am I going to come out of this one? Watch what God can do as you trust in him, as you walk with him. And lay aside those people who are telling you it's over. It's over. It's not over until God says so. And today is Saturday. How perfect is it that this is a day when there are a lot of people who are saying, well, where is that man who said he was a Christ? Didn't he die and didn't we bury him? Didn't we crucify him? Your Sunday is coming. Your resurrection is coming. It's so opportune that this is a season when Saturday was a silent day when nobody was outside because they thought it was over with. But even as you see things dying and things dying in your life, or even people in your life, seasons in your life seeming like they just died and shriveled and are gone, Sunday is coming. But there is nothing better than prophesying to yourself and saying, girl, pick it up, pick yourself up, look at the mirror and say, get up. Let's find a way. Let's call somebody who will find a way. You'll be resourceful and you'd learn how to think outside the box and find a way to pick yourself up. Somebody may not put $1 million on your doorstep, but God is going to send somebody who will help you push forward to that next place, and you'll be stronger, you'll be wiser, you'll be better. The preacher in me couldn't stop there. I just had to jump in there. Dr. Sarah, did you have any final thoughts before we shift gears again?
No, it's okay. I think we can shift gears.
Okay, so let me see. Oh, wow, I believe I'm next. So there was a question that came from a lot of people, which is really the core of why we wanted to have this conversation, is how do we notice those emotional and psychological signs that we're actually declining, that we're not doing well? What are some of those signs that I'm not functioning in a good way? How will I know that I'm not doing good? Self-awareness is really a powerful thing. It frustrates me when I have a client sitting in front of me and I ask them, so what's going on? And they're like, I don't know. I hear that with teenagers a lot. And those of you with teenagers, you know how that goes. They just shrug their shoulders and like, I don't know. Are you hungry? I don't know. I mean, you can't determine whether they're hungry. They're the ones who know. And so self-awareness at that age is not really solid. But I want to challenge us to increase our self-awareness, especially as adult people, because know thyself. Know what when you're at full tank, and know when you're at half tank, and know when you're actually on empty and running on fumes. Because when you don't have self-awareness, the people who suffer most are the people around you. Because you're not functioning well and people around you are wondering, why is she snapping at everybody? Why is mommy so angry all the time? And just like that Snickers commercial where they say, eat something, just eat a Snicker bar and you'll be fine. Some of us literally need somebody to put a Snicker bar in our face and say, you need to take care of your emotional health. So we stop being collateral all around you. And so I want to talk about how to notice when you need to kind of go back and get the tank refilled a little bit, go and recharge, get recharged, go and rejuvenate a little bit. Because what happens is when you have that happens when you've either exhausted the coping strategies that you already have, or the coping strategies that you had are no longer effective, or they cannot handle what you have, what you're dealing with right now. So it's usually either one of those. You have not built a toolbox of coping strategies, or you had some and they're no longer, they can't handle what's at hand. The storm is too big. You need to kind of go back and get some new ones. So two clusters of things that may happen most of the time, especially right now, is depressive symptoms and anxiety symptoms and general stress. So what we may experience right now, what the people around you, your family, your friends, people in your network may experience, is going to be somewhere in there, especially if you did not have a pre-existing condition and this is new territory. You're usually the upbeat, person who's always on the go, you may notice that some of these are beginning to creep up on you. Now, the people who've had some pre-existing maybe diagnoses of anxiety or depression, those are people I'm a little worried about, because I think they need a little bit more help, because they're a little bit behind the starting line when stressors come their way. Or people who had some disability or some limitation in the past, they're just much more vulnerable. And so those are people you need to keep an eye on as well. But if you're probably the person who now, or maybe you did have something, but you just didn't know that there was a problem until this thing hit and you realize, I'm not functioning really well. So when, I know we throw words around a lot when we say, oh, I'm feeling really depressed today. When you just in a little bit of a slump for a couple of hours after work because you're tired, you didn't eat. But I'm talking about actually people who are struggling with depression, depressive symptoms. And sometimes you have 2 symptoms, sometimes you have 5, sometimes it's chronic, sometimes it's just a situational experience. And some of the symptoms that I want to address are changes in sleep patterns. You may notice that your sleep has changed a lot, especially in the last month or so. Either you're sleeping a lot, or you go to sleep, but you're waking up a lot. Every couple of hours you're up and you're thinking, wow, it's only 2. You wake up again, it's only 4, and you just can't get into deep REM kind of sleep. Or you wake up too early, it's 3 o'clock and you're up and that's the end. You've cleaned the house, you've done everything. Your sleep patterns are just not working. And then there are those who are having trouble falling asleep. You lay in your bed until you get up. So sleep changes in your sleep, I would say keep an eye on that. Some of us may struggle with irritability. You're just yelling and snapping at everybody. Everything gets on your nerves. If you can't find the remote, you're getting upset. If there are dishes in the sink, your teenagers didn't do them. Usually you just tell them, Jerry, do the dishes. But now you're saying, Jerry, Joki, Wagoi, everybody, you're calling everybody's name. Then watch for that level of irritability when you're blowing things out of proportion. That could be a sign of depression and heightened stress. Changes in eating habits, maybe you're eating a lot, or you've lost your appetite. You're really barely eating because this transitional phase has taken a shift from your schedule and you're realizing, I'm not hungry anymore. And when the food is there, it just tastes like plastic. I don't even want it. That could be a sign of something is going on, especially those of you who pride yourselves that I can go for 12 hours and I didn't eat anything. That's a sign that something is awry there. Depressed mood, when you feel like, it's hard to describe depression. It's like you have a hole within you, this dark hole and a sense of emptiness, sadness. It's just dark and bleak. And you just can't crawl your way out of that. And your mood is just chronically down. Again, I'm not talking about the 2 hours when you're just feeling like, I'm feeling out of it. I'm talking about 5 out of 7 days. You're in that spot where you're really down and depressed. That's something to keep an eye on. If you're tearful all the time, and I'm not talking about the natural criers who you just cry at the drop of a hat. I'm talking about people who usually that's not your way of operating, but now you're very sensitive. You're crying at everything. If your husband doesn't say hello and he comes home, you're crying and you blow things out of proportion. You must not like me anymore. Your thought processes are very extreme and you're just very sensitive. You want to keep an eye on that. That could be depression, sense of helplessness, hopelessness. And you find yourself saying things like, so what's the point? I can't do this. I don't even want to do it. I can't do it. And then you start saying, I've always not been. Because when you're depressed, it's like you have a new set of glasses that are really cloudy. Everything that you see through those glasses looks really bleak, looks really negative. That's a sign of depression. If you have no motivation, you have no drive, you have no zest for everything, you can't be productive, that is a sign of depression, that you just can't find the energy to do anything. Your energy is really low. I talked about sleep, but you have trouble getting out of bed. You can lounge there for an hour before your feet hit the ground. You want to watch out for that. That could be depression. You have trouble moving around, just getting off the couch. You have trouble just observing hygiene, just taking a shower is a problem. And I'm saying you, but it could be somebody in your life. So maybe it's somebody in your house that you're watching. I have to just drag them to take a shower when they usually would be grooming, and maybe your teenager always is doing her makeup and spends 30 minutes in the mirror just getting herself dolled up, but now she's barely combing her hair. And with teenagers, it's something you may notice with them, they stay in their room and they sit in the dark, blinds drawn, and they can sit there all day, and you're wondering, wow, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're still in there. You want to keep an eye on that, because they cross the line between just teenage phase to where it's really a concerning issue. So you want to keep an eye on that. Poor concentration, you can't focus. And I'm not talking about people who had a previous diagnosis of ADHD. It's somebody who's usually functioning okay, but suddenly you're having trouble concentrating, getting tasks done, you're just struggling, your mind just is all over the place, and it's not because you're now teleworking. Maybe that is depression. Let me see if I can throw in a couple more symptoms. A loss of interest in activities, pleasurable activities, stuff you're interested in before, you would enjoy doing, watching a movie. Maybe you're the kind of person who likes watching crime drama, NCIS, what have you, and suddenly, you know, your family's like, hey, This Is Us is on, Mom, we always watch this together. And you're like, nah, you're not interested. If you find yourself losing interest in things you usually would enjoy, maybe when spring comes, you're the one in the garden planting your sukumas and all that, but you find like, I don't want to do it anymore. So watch out for stuff like that. Social isolation, you don't want to do anything anymore, like I talked about the teens, but sometimes even as adults, you just want to be left alone. And because you're maybe the mom in the house, nobody can come to your room. You're like, you guys watch TV, do whatever, eat your snacks, just let me be. That's probably a sign of depression. People who either do not use alcohol or other drugs, and they suddenly start using, they find those urges to want to use, you want to keep an eye on that. Or people who normally they have a glass of wine here and there, but suddenly they can down the whole bottle in one night. That's probably a sign of they're trying to compensate and deal with something there. So those are just some signs of maybe it's depression, maybe something is going on beyond I'm just having a bad day. Sometimes, especially now, this season of COVID-19, that goes hand in hand with anxiety. Now, some symptoms of anxiety are things like, you know, people, when you feel really jittery and irritable and very restless, and you just find you just can't sit yourself down, you're a busybody, and that's usually not your normal functioning. Again, you know, everybody here, you should know your baseline, where you function, and this is how I roll every day. If you're stepping outside of that and you find yourself, I'm so restless, I'm worrying a lot, I'm talking about all these things I'm worrying about all the time, that's a sign of anxiety. You have this irrational, catastrophic thoughts, and you're just thinking about all these very negative things, that's probably a sign of anxiety. You're very hypervigilant, even in your own home, everything is just making you jumpy. Keep an eye on that. That's probably a sign of underlying anxiety. And it may be just exposing something that was already there. And this stress, I just pushed it to the surface a lot more. What are some other symptoms? Insomnia, I mentioned that before. People who struggle with anxiety have trouble sleeping. Insomnia can really be a big deal for them because your mind is just going. You can't concentrate. Muscle tension is a big one for even just general stress. Something I like to, you probably, when I started, I said, know thyself. You probably know where your stress rests. When we go through stress, your body and your whole system has a place that they assign that stress to within your body. And for some of us, I know for me, my stress rests right here at the base of my shoulders. And I can feel the tension there when I'm stressed out. And all I need to do is I can feel, oh, that is really, really stiff. And or if you sit up like that and you try and pull a giraffe kind of move and you feel the tension, that's probably your stress sits right there. For some of you, it's your lower back, so that if you go like that and you go like that, you can feel it. For some of you, it sits in your belly. You just have you're constipated. You're just having trouble. For some of us, it's diarrhea. When you're stressed out, you just are in the bathroom a lot. So know your body and know where your stress is assigned in your body. Knots in your stomach. Some people, it's nausea, headaches. I wish I could see your faces, because I'm sure some people would be nodding their heads. You know how you function best. So know when anxiety is taking over and try and figure out how to get help. There have been questions about panic attacks. We don't talk about this much because it's very scary for some of us, because when a panic attack comes on, all those symptoms I've mentioned about anxiety, it's like they all come at you at once. Mm-hmm. And you have trouble breathing, you have this really shallow breathing, you have sweaty palms, your hands are shaking, you hold your hand up like that and it just goes like that. You have this tunnel vision, you feel like everything is closing in on you, your heart is racing, and you feel like I'm just gonna die. You feel like I'm having a heart attack. Now, you will not die from a panic attack, but you will feel like I'm gonna die. That's what's usually scary about it, and you end up in the emergency room because you're thinking like everything is happening too fast. Usually it goes 5 to 10 minutes and then it dissipates. So Julia is going to talk about some coping mechanisms that can help us manage some of the anxiety. The last thing I want to talk about before I switch over to the next person is a major symptom that goes along with all this, and that is suicidality. Suicidality is on the uptake right now because of that sense of helplessness and people feeling boxed in by the system right now because of various reasons. Now, I want to just throw out a couple of things that I want us to keep an eye on as you think about, am I dealing with suicidal thoughts, or is somebody in my household or somebody I know, somebody I work with, somebody in my network? Some signs that somebody may be struggling with that is if they're researching ways of dying. What are some painless ways that people die? They may be on the internet looking at what are some ways, what can I take? Or maybe they're thinking firearms. Maybe you're one of those people, you have firearms in your home. Or they know there's plenty of medication in your medicine cabinet, and they're thinking about how much would I take to have a painless death. Especially parents, be in the habit of going and looking at the search engines and see what are the kids looking at? What are they researching? Where do they go when they're sitting in their room? Just go to the history and see where they've been. And if you see there, and some of it is they're researching ways of dying, that's probably a sign that you need to keep an eye on, or they're posting or talking about death on social media, saying goodbye to people, saying goodbye to you, talking about themselves in the past tense or how the future is going to be, without them, or they keep talking about they feel like they're a burden to you or to other people. It would be better if I'm not here. Those are signs of suicide. If they're giving away their prized possessions, if they're collectors and they like collecting Pokemons or whatever it is, or Kenyan stamps, I don't know, Kenyan coins, and then suddenly they're like, you can have this. I'm no longer interested in this. Mom, I really don't need that car that you gave me. Keep an eye on that. When people have bursts of energy or positivity, suddenly when they were down, remember those depressive symptoms I talked about? Suddenly they're excited and they're like, you know what? I think I'm good. Something is up, especially if there was no intervention to help them and they wake up and suddenly they're doing good. Keep an eye on that person. Or they're engaging in risky behaviors. They're driving while intoxicated, and you told them that's not something they should do. Keep an eye on that. So I'm gonna pause there, but what I would say you could do in those situations, if you see those symptoms coming up, is just take people to the hospital. Call 911, or just tell them we're going to the hospital. I'm going to drive you there, or I'm going to sit here with you. Most of the time, it's a cry for help. They need somebody to tell them they're valued, they're important, that we care, that they're there. You may also call, this is a number I want everybody to note, the National Suicide Prevention Line, which is 1-800-273-TALK, T-A-L-K. is a number you always have to have. And you can even go to their website and order material. They're very quick to send you, refrigerator magnets. I would say, especially in a home that there's more than one person, just go to the National Suicide Prevention Line, or AFSP, American Suicide Prevention Foundation. You can order those magnets, and you can have one always on your refrigerator, so that you know you don't have to memorize that number. For some of us, because we do this work, we've memorized it, but so that you know who to call if you don't know what to do and you can't reach any of us. So I'm going to stop there because I am very passionate about this work. I'm going to hold the questions to the end, but I just want us to transition to have Julia pick up from there with coping strategies. And some of you maybe do not know her. She's a dual licensed clinician, and she's my friend. All these ladies are my friends. In Florida right now, and as a marriage family therapist, as well as a mental health counselor. Julia is in private practice, and her expertise is in couples work, and especially premarital counseling. She's worked in church settings, doing both faith-based and regular counseling, especially in an urban setting. She does something that some people may be scared of doing, but she has run a pregnant teens group and a mom's group, and worked in an agency providing therapy for postpartum depression for new moms, which is really commendable. She's a minister, she's a pastor's wife, her and her husband pastor in the Palm Beach area. She's a mother of 4 amazing children, and she's also a worship minister and a musician. They have a great band. So without much ado, I'll hand over to Julia to pick up on talking to us about healthy ways of coping with stress around this time. Julia, you're on. You're on mute, so you may want to unmute. If I can find you, I'll unmute you.
There we go.
All right.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. This is Julia. My name is Julia Sanna, as Ruth said, as Lilian said. And I'm really excited to be sharing with us all today. I enjoy the work that I do. I'm really passionate about my work with couples and also working with individuals. If you can't hear me for any reason, just let me know. Work with individuals. And one of the special things that I do here in Palm Beach County is that I'm registered with the Palm Beach Courthouse as a marriage prep provider because the state of Florida requires couples to take a class for marriage before they get married, especially if they're trying to get married quickly, and that way they can at least think about it before. The other opportunity that I'm excited to have is I've partnered with African American organizations, nonprofits here in Palm Beach County, and I'm able to go in and speak. And they're doing some incredible things. They're mentoring women, they're mentoring young men. They're literally changing lives around here. And that's been one of my great passions. And this year, I've started counseling and seeing more pastors and church leaders who are experiencing depression and stress. So this is a topic that is really passionate, a passionate topic for all of us here, because we know that believers also experience depression and stress. And today I'm going to talk about how to cope, the coping mechanisms, and I'm going to share that I have on here. This is a bit of an intro about who I am. That's my information if you need to get a hold of me, earlyfamilyyears.org. So why do we pray? What's the whole thing about people asking us, why should I pray? Especially to do with mental health, because there's that little tension about science and religion, science and faith. But for me as a clinician of faith, there was only one scripture. We could quote a ton of things theologically, but there was one that stood out, and simply Psalms 46:1. God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. And boy, do we have trouble right now. This is trouble that we're going through, the entire world going through this. So that's why we pray. That's why I'm praying. That's why I'm encouraging us to pray through this season. So stress and spiritual health, coping, especially when you're in a confined space and you're dealing with stress, the number one thing that I want to talk about is scripture and affirmations. So a lot of us in the mental health field, and a couple of you guys are coaches. I've seen a couple of our friends on there who are listening right now, and we always talk about positive affirmations, which is putting positive comments and phrases around the house so that you remind yourself whenever you feel down. The most powerful positive affirmation is scripture that goes with what you're going through or what you believe in the Lord, and having it around us, and especially now when we're all shut in. And I realize that we've logged in from, we have US, we have people in Africa, we have people around the other continents, so we're in different time zones. But having those affirmations is a really important thing. And then virtual worship. Virtual worship is when you're able to go online, pull up the favorite worship song, and just immerse yourself in it. Because here's the thing, when you experience stress like that, it can feel as if your whole body is shutting down. It can feel as if your whole mind is shutting down. You're in a confined space. I know that the shutdowns around the different countries are different right now. We're all experiencing a different level. Here where we are, it's a safer stay at home. People are driving to maybe the store, but mostly you're home. And virtual worship is a good way of lowering the stress in your mind. Meditation and reflection is really, really important. And meditation is a little bit more than prayer. Meditation is the time that we take to just sit quietly and listen. And for anybody who's a Christian, who's a believer, or I know a couple of people who are practicing other faiths who are on here on this presentation, or you might be listening to it later. Meditation could be whatever you're doing, as long as you take that opportunity to sit quietly and listen and be able to hear what's going on the inside and be able to focus. And literally you can use music, or you can use just quiet meditation. And I put on there on this article, the Mindful Christian channel on YouTube. It's one of my favorite channels. They use music and she uses scripture, and I actually used it this morning. And the one that I used is how to be still. So there's one about being still, freedom from worry, anxiety. So I wanted to make sure that I give you guys that resource. Ruth talked about this. The biggest stress reliever is knowing what we have control over. So your power over COVID-19 stress lies in knowing what you can control, all right? And one of the things that I talk about, because one of my modes of therapy is cognitive behavior therapy. And that means we're focused a lot on how our thoughts influence our feelings and influence our actions. So the one thing we have control over is the thoughts that we choose to allow to set in our minds, and then our response to those thoughts. So in other words, if I have a thought, if we go to the drastic place and say, oh, we're all gonna get COVID-19, or maybe we're dealing with COVID-19, because right now I also have clients who are COVID positive. And so the mindset that we have is going to make a big difference in how we're thinking about it. So we need to challenge the thought that we have. Is this a valid thought, or is this not a valid thought? And then our response to it. And our response is literally changing our perspective about the issue. It's saying, okay, I don't have COVID right now. I might know some people who do, or family or friends, people that I love who do, but I have this in my control. I can follow the guidelines. I can follow the health guidelines. I can be careful. And if I have it, I'm following what the doctor says, if I'm quarantining, if I'm in hospital. So you have a plan over what you can control. Guys, we cannot control the length of the shutdowns, okay? So don't even let that be the thing that you worry about. And then you can't control other people's reaction, especially when you're living with other people right now. Because I know at home, whether you're in Kenya, in Nigeria, whether you're in England, you're in Europe, you're in Asia, you're here in the US, we can't control the people that we're living with, because maybe you got shut down together in the home or in your building, or the borders are shut down, you can't fly in and out. So knowing what we can control makes a big difference. So I want to talk a little bit about marriage and relationships. Wow. Right now, if you ever complained about not spending time with your spouse, you're spending a lot of time. And so you're excited about it, and maybe you're not excited about it, because it depends on how much you're getting on each other's nerves. All the romantic parts of it are like, oh, okay. So today I want to give you permission. It's okay to be apart while together, all right? We used to help long distance couples learn how to be together while apart. But now that we're all shutting together, we give you permission to be apart while together. And so that means that we all need space. And that means if you see your partner, your spouse going in to do some project and they're lost for 3-4 hours, like my husband does that, lost in the garage for 3 hours, literally he's in the middle of that too right now. Or I'm out and I'm trying to figure books that I've had on the shelves forever. Go do whatever you need to do and enjoy that mental health space. And I'm talking in terms of the fact that we are confined right now, confined together. The other thing, it's a temptation to bring up old fights and old issues while you're confined together to cope with the stress of COVID-19. That stress can make you be like, oh, I remember last year you did blah, 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 blah. And last week you did blah, 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 blah. And today, blah, blah. And so it blows up into a big fight because you're stressed and then you're bringing up old fights. So I'd like us to focus on the present right now. It doesn't mean the issue is not important, but we need the wisdom to learn how to table things that are not going to help you cope right now. So that means conserve your energy. That's what I share with couples. You want to have a conversation or a fight where your energy will be used in a good way. So if you're having a fight while right now in stress mode, and you're realizing that this fight is going nowhere, that's a good hint. Conserve your energy, put that topic aside until there's time to talk about it. The other thing I want to say, don't make a permanent decision right now with what you're dealing with. Unless what you're facing is an abusive situation. In that case, then that rule does not apply. If you're dealing with any sort of abuse that's coming out of the relationship because you're stuck together during this confinement of COVID-19, then please find a way for safety. If you have there are numbers that are available, and there might be people who are also willing to help you find a place to stay. So this is not what we're saying. If you're dealing with abuse, that's a separate issue. And please feel free to contact us separately on that. But I wanted to let us know about that part. So what do you do for fun in a relationship when you're stuck during COVID-19? And you're like, we've done everything we can. You can't go to the park. Here in Florida, you can't go to the park. You can't go to the beach. We're so spoiled because the beach is nearby. All that is shut down. All the malls are shut. Everything is shut down pretty much. You can't even go to the movies. Everything is shut down. So one of the things that is fun to do is look at old albums and then tell each other the stories and tell your kids the stories about the old pictures. Because we're all so busy, we've forgotten about the old physical albums. All our pictures are trapped in Neverland on phones and computers, all right? So that's a fun thing to do. How about reading old letters and emails aloud that you wrote to each other 20-something years ago? For some of us on here, we've been married for quite a while, and so we forget all the letters that we wrote. If you're by yourself, what are some of the letters that you can pull up, things from the past, that you can look through and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this, I went through that, wow. And then recreate indoor funny dates. This is for couples, which could be, one of you could be, okay, I saw a really cool clip yesterday of a parents that decided to create a restaurant for their children. And the parents are the waiters, and they come in and they give them everything. Like, here's your menu, here's your drink, what would you like to order? So same thing, recreate indoor funny dates among you. And then also look to the future, plan something creative while you're together, while you're stuck together. And then the best part of this, visioning. Let's all imagine December 21, 2020, and this 2020 is over, okay? And that's, let's be honest, that's a blessing. Because we're saying, Lord, you've taken us through, you've seen us through. It's been not the best year in the universe. But Father, we look forward to 2020, December 31st, and being able to say, this too passed, this too passed. For parents, one of the things that we're dealing with is parenting stress. We have 4 kids. We have a high schooler, a middle school, high school meaning 14, 11-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So I totally get the parenting stress right now when they're all together. And when our all 4 kids start fighting, I want to take a video just to show the noise, the level of noise. So the number one thing that I want to share with parents is you're enough as a parent. You don't need to be the best at everything. So if you see this post on Instagram, on Pinterest, on Facebook, on YouTube about people doing awesome things, and even I've posted a couple of things the kids have done, but usually it's because they're painting or doing some or planting that we decided to plant. Please know you don't have to be perfect. Don't give yourself extra stress. In fact, most of our kids just want to know we love them, we are there for them, and we'll stop doing what we're doing and listen to them. So you already have what you need inside the house for them to be creative. The one thing I want to share with us also, please don't discipline your child in anger or frustration, because right now we're all so stressed out. A child doesn't have to do much for us to fly off the handle, but I want to ask us, don't do it. And how do we avoid that? It's taking the parental time out. With our kids, we tell them, you need a time out, but for us as parents, we also take the time out and we actually leave the room. Just you walk away from the room, you calm down, and then come back and speak to the child or whatever discipline it is. If you have to take their stuff away, if they have to sit down. And I understand, of course, if it's a little kid and they were trying to run down the street with the ball, that's a different thing. We've all been there. So, but I want us to learn, please don't hit your child. Let's not say we're Africans, we were beaten, so we beat our children. Please, let's not do that, because that's kind of what we've been taught. That's what we used to say. But we know better, we do better, okay? We all love our parents, but there's some things that change with every generation. Even our parents change some of the things their parents did, all right? Stress busters with children, all right? Card games, if you have any card games in the house, or you can create, have them draw something. Seriously, these kids nowadays, see, now we get to complain about the current generation. But have them draw something. If you have puzzles in the house, have them draw puzzles. If you're at home and you don't have cards or puzzles, every child has a pen and a paper somewhere that they can draw different things, different games, and just pass them together. Let's do an old school dance-off. What is that? We had our kids we played for them old music, because us, we like 90s hip-hop. So we played that old music, and then we showed them the moves we used to have, and they had to show us the moves of nowadays. That's a really funny thing. Or have each kid create their own dance, and the whole family has to do that dance. It's the most hilarious thing you'll ever see. Spoon's musical show, have them create a show with stuff in the house. Cook a family recipe. The other day, I tried to teach my kids how to make mandazis. It's very hard, but at least they could put the glass on and twist it around. And then painting and games. In Kenya, we used to play a game called Kati. Teach your kids how to throw the ball at other family members. And we love our family members. Yes, we do. When we know we're right, we want to tell them off, because you're like, I've had it and I'm going to tell you off right now. The problem of telling off people that we love and we're living with is that they're still going to be in the house with you, because we're confined and shut in together. So that you just introduced very negative energy in the house and you're stuck in there with it. So there's that boundaries and respect, but there's one thing about the boundary that is important. Abuse of any form is never okay. So don't accept any abuse. Don't accept anybody encouraging abuse towards you. That is not okay, all right? But if you're stuck, find a way to get away also. If you need to go to the balcony, need to go outside by yourself for a while, do that. And don't feel guilty about it. This is the one that I want to share. I hope everybody can see this screen about self-care, our own self-care, all right? Asking for help. It's okay to spend time alone. It's okay to put yourself first. And if you're on here, guys, I totally commend you, because that means you've put yourself first. That's important. Ask for what you need. And most important, know who you need to ask from. In other words, figure out what the need is and then be like, I know so-and-so can do this, I know so-and-so. Just call them on the phone. And then setting the boundaries, we have to stay at home, so that's kind of given. Say no to some things, okay? Just because you're home doesn't mean that you have all the free time in the world. So it doesn't mean that this is the time that people are asking you to do a million things for them. You also have your own stuff going on. It's okay to say no. And then forgive yourself for the times that we're falling short. Take a step back, take a deep breath. Let's go back to the mindful thing that I talked about and be able to just come out of it and be like, okay, we can do this. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to share on dealing with that particular kind of stress when confined together. And I'm going to open it up now to my panelists, to my fellow panelists, to say something.
I know most people are, well, everybody is probably working from home, but one of the things that would help with increasing productivity is, I've been sharing this with my staff as well and my students, is show up in the space the way you would show up at work. As in, if you're the person who, the whole bunch of you in the house and some people have to do classwork and you're homeschooling and you have to log into meetings with your workplace and all that, show up in that space the way you would show up. And your mental preparation is such a big deal. Dress up for work. Okay, you don't have to get all dolled up with everything, but find a way to show up in that space. I have one of my friends who's also a psychologist, and her kids go to private school. She dresses them up for school. They put on their uniforms, they sit at the dining table, and school is in session. But I know what kind of a person she is, and she dresses for work too, and everybody's at their station, and you don't chat with each other until it's time for break, and then you go back to your station. And she's saying how that has improved the productivity of the family because she's holding everybody to a very concrete schedule. And it's not that now, because we're working from home, we are on vacation. Mm-hmm. We're still expected to be productive. And the kids, you've never homeschooled, you have to homeschool, but coach your family to show up in the spaces the way they would show up. Maybe for some of you who've been teleworking for a long time, you can drag your laptop in your bed with your pajamas and do it. Some of us can't do that because mentally you feel like you're at the beach trying to be productive. And you only put on a shirt when you have to do that WebEx or a Zoom call. That's when you're like, you take the headscarf off or put the wig on or whatever it is that you need to do. But show up in your professional spaces and check how it will kick up your productivity. Get the kids to make their beds, get them to do everything on time. And you have to, I think it's Ruth who said earlier, model that behavior. Because some of us are struggling with getting the family to line up because we're also not lining up. The sink is full because you're like, oh, we're all home, we can do it. No, say school starts at 8 o'clock. So everybody, you've showered, you've brushed your teeth, you've grabbed your laptop or your Chromebook, whatever it is. And yeah, no chatting, and make your bed and do all that. Now, I can speak like that because I don't have kids in my house. But some of you will probably beg to differ. But from a research standpoint, I believe I can see the moms on the panel shaking their heads. So I will be quiet for now because I don't have any experiential knowledge in that regard. Ruth, or Sarah, you want to chime in with that?
I wasn't shaking my head. I was definitely nodding. I definitely agree with that. I think it is very important that we show up. I already work from home even prior to COVID, and I would take a shower and put on some clothes as though I was going out, to a workplace. And I think it's important for our children to know that they need to take their schooling seriously. And I think when we dress, we tend to have that internal mental focus that we need to perform at our best. So I definitely agree with you, Lilian.
Yeah. I would like to actually, I don't know if my my friend is, Musi is on here because somebody had a question about the special needs moms. Having how to deal with that right now. And I didn't want to just ask to just give a psychological point of view. And I see her beautiful son is on there. Just to be able to share with us a little bit, maybe Musi, on how, so she's an advocate too for parents with special needs children, and she works for an organization that does that. So she's the best person to give us a little tip, Musi, if you're able to, about a child with special needs. Not yet. She's trying. Okay, she's gonna.
Audio is not working.
Yeah, she's saying her audio is not working. All right. All right. So maybe she'll post something on there. But what I want to share is what I've seen and what I know is that the issue of support, of reaching out to people around you when you need to have a break from possibilities children. I had a mom describe the children as a possibilities children, so that also our mindset is not just on this and that, what they can do, but the possibilities that they have. So having that support system and being able to call on somebody else if they're in the home with you, or just not feeling guilty if you need to give them an iPad to play with for a second while you take a mom break, while you take a dad break, because we also have dads who are the only ones staying with their children. And Musi did post that she did an engaged talk last year. And if she finds a link, she'll be able to put it up there, because she talked about how, as a parent, how to deal with the stress of parenting a special needs child. So I wanted to make sure we didn't ignore that. Thank you so much, ladies.
Well, thank you so much, Julia. That is, like I said, we really don't have enough time to cover everything. We have a lot of information we would share with you, and I actually want to honor the expertise that's represented on this webinar today. I see some of my colleagues who are also mental health professionals on the webinar today, and there's just a wealth of information on here. We just don't have enough time. So how about we will segue to our last speaker today, who is Praise. You know, it's awesome when your name is Praise. So you can only imagine what happens in that house. Yeah. So she is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She works for Riverside University Health Systems in the behavioral health unit. And this is, those of you who don't know, Riverside is in Southern California. And her work focuses on assessment and placement of incompetent offenders in competency training programs such as forensic state hospitals and other law facilities. So Praise also works in the Riverside County Collaborative Court programs, which includes the mental health courts, the Veterans Treatment Court, diversion program, and also they seem to have a newly established homeless court system going on there. So she's originally from Nigeria, so we're glad to have her, Naijogalo, in the house. She's a mom, and she has a handsome 7-year-old young man with her. And so I will yield the floor to her. She's going to actually address, again, in just a little, just briefly, she's going to address the stigma associated with acknowledging psychological and emotional struggles, especially as African people, and how our reluctance in help-seeking behavior. And this precedes COVID-19. This is just in general, the stigma associated with acknowledging that we have mental health struggles and that we are not able to seek help. I know earlier on, Sarah talked about our reluctance to use psychotropic medication. So Praise is going to build on that in terms of our reluctance to actually acknowledge that we have an issue and seek the help, and how we can. There were a lot of questions that came up about that. So she's going to address that to the best of her ability in about 10 minutes or so.
Yes, so hi everyone. It's barely noon here. So yay, good afternoon. So I'm Praise, and as you can tell probably from my name, my dad was a minister So I'm a preacher's kid, yay. But also what sets me a little apart from some people is, aside from my dad being a pastor, he was also a therapist. So I grew up in a household where mental health was discussed. And we talked about mental illnesses, the symptoms, treatment, why people need to seek services. And I've moved it into my life now as a mom. And, you know, some of my panelists has talked about how we represent our beliefs in our household. And my 7-year-old and I, we do talk about our feelings a lot. You know, we do say, I love you a lot. And that's something that is missing in a lot of African households. It's even sharing how we feel about our kids and allowing them to share feelings with us. We talk about sad things, happy things. He's only 7, so I have to put it in certain ways, you know, where he understands and he's able to explain his feelings to me. And when he throws tantrums, I've learned when to leave him alone and then wait for a while before I go back and we talk about it and talk about what we can do differently. And you know, I've had people look at me funny, like, why do you do that? He's 7. Well, he's a person too, just like us. So having to talk about that. And that was the kind of household I grew up in. From my mom being a teacher to my dad being a pastor and a therapist, and my older sister is a therapist, my younger sister is a therapist. We're all African therapists. So I'll start with this story. My introduction to mental health and mental health symptoms. I was a kid growing up in Nigeria, and I remember there was a young man. At that time, I thought he was probably in his 40s or older. But now looking back, I realized that he was probably in his 20s. And he talked to himself. He walked around our neighborhood, usually dirty. He was homeless. He wore dirty clothes. And sometimes he didn't have any clothes. And we were never told to be scared of him, but the general consensus was that he was scary. He was possessed by demons. And there was something bad about him. So he was ostracized by the community. And he lived in this abandoned building by the train tracks, that we were always scared of going close to that building to play because something bad may happen to you. It wasn't until I was older that I realized that that poor boy had schizophrenia and, you know, untreated schizophrenia. But we all looked at it as, you know, evil spirits or the demons probably holding him. And you had to stay away from that. And now thinking back as an adult, from an African family and from the African culture where we've always had a stigma towards mental illness, not just the schizophrenic people, but also depression and anxiety. You're not supposed to have those feelings. You're not supposed to feel that way. You're supposed to be strong. We're not supposed to talk about our feelings because we're focused on education. We're focused on sports. And I've seen people that are in love, trying to get married, but once the other family hears that somebody in the other family has any kind of mental illness, what happens? That marriage ends. They're not supposed to get married because now we transmit those mental illness symptoms apparently to the other family. I don't know how, if it's in the air or whatnot. But I think because there's no understanding of mental health symptoms in the African community, even in the Black community, that it seems like we don't have a true understanding of that mental illness, of the symptoms, and how do we manage those. So a big part of it is, what do we do about stigma? We have to start by destigmatizing the beliefs of the symptoms. When we are feeling those symptoms, first, we have to accept it as in ourselves. If we're feeling depressed, if we're feeling anxious, I know my co-panelists have talked about the symptoms, what the symptoms are. And I'm sure a lot of us are now thinking about ourselves. Ooh, I'm feeling like that. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not eating well. Maybe this is what's going on with me. And generally starting to accept that and seeking help. And we've all talked about where the help is, and also knowing that there are African therapists out there. I think there's also the belief that, because especially for a lot of us being immigrants and being in all, different countries in the US, we feel like we can't go to the other people to ask for help because they won't understand our culture. And then us in our culture, we frown upon that. So seeking out mental health services through our own people, we are out there. And if you want to look for an African therapist, that's okay. If you want to look for a therapist from Kenya, they are out there. A therapist from Nigeria, we are out there, South Africa, whatever country that you're looking for, to see someone that understands your culture, understands that when your family member looks at you and you admit that you have mental illness or you're feeling any symptoms, and they're not looking at you and saying, ooh, your village people are working hard against you. That's not what's going on. These symptoms are real and we have to acknowledge them. Like my co-panelists talked about before, if you wear glasses, you go to an eye doctor and get glasses. So if you're feeling sad, why can't we go talk to somebody about that sadness? Why can't we acknowledge it? So looking towards the society and expecting them to accept it is good. But we have to also in ourselves accept and admit that we have some symptoms, that we have things going on that we can't manage, and seeking help with the coping skills and actually putting them in practice, not just seeking the help, but do you do what you're told to do? We can be hard-headed. I admit that. I'm one of those people. You tell me, praise, go do this, and I look at you like, why? So having to understand that if your therapist tells you, take a walk, go walk around the park. Don't say, oh, that's useless things to do. We Africans do that. A lot of times when people tell you to do something, you tell them that's useless. Why don't you go sit over there and read a book? What is that doing for you? That's not earning you any money to go walk. That's not earning you any money to go talk to somebody. That's not going to get you a degree. Well, maybe feeling better about yourself, feeling better will help you get more educated, help you do your job better, help you sleep at night. That way, when you wake up in the morning, you can do your job better. So having to learn to listen to your body, as was spoken before, listen to other people, being open not to only talk to other people about how you're feeling, but also open to accepting the help and accepting what we're told, okay? And then not, you still get to go talk to your preacher, that's fine. That's a part of those positive coping skills, bringing the church in, bringing your Bible in as a part of our coping skills, but also putting in practice other things to do and not just sitting and saying, because I'm African, this is not okay. Okay. So that was 10 minutes. Any questions?
That was really good. I really appreciate you covering that. That's a huge area that we can't even exhaust because the stigma. The fact that we are all here and we have a lot of people registered. I know right now some people have been in and out, but we've had roughly 50 people come in into the webinar today, and I have a lot of people who registered but have just messaged me that they were not able to come in, and there's even somebody trying to get in right now. So this is much needed. The fact that we all responded and showed up is a testament to us acknowledging that this is something we need to be doing, that acknowledging the stigma is something we need to, and then we need to take that next step and say, so what are we going to do about it? Because all the issues that are going on, whether it's regarding COVID-19 or just general stressors, we're not exempt from them just because of our heritage. They still touch us. And, the panelists and I were discussing earlier and talking about how the people that we see that we provide excellent services to usually not people who look like us, not people of our heritage. And most of the time, they're also the people who can afford it. And so we are committed to doing that outreach to make sure that, and research already shows that we respond better when we are matched with somebody who is racially and ethnically similar to us. We feel like they have some understanding of what we're experiencing. Not always the case. I've also had people who've avoided me because I'm from where they are. They think that I don't want you to know my business. So it can go either way. But it's a much needed area. And I want to just begin to, I was scrolling through to see if there were any other questions that we haven't touched on. I did receive a lot of questions. So those of you who submitted questions, some of those were very specific and we may not be able to address them. And we're actually over the time that I had blocked off for the webinar. So I want to give the panelists maybe a minute or two to have some final comments before I kind of begin to bring us to a close. I'll probably just go down the panels. Julia, you're to my right, my left. You go first.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys, for coming out. My goodness, because we're all around the world right now. I know it's nighttime in some of the places, and we're gonna continue this. This is not the end, and we are all in this together. I know the title says we are experts, but you know what? None of us has been through this. So we are in this together with you. All we're sharing is what we've seen and known over the last couple of years. And we're going to be available. Dr. Lilian Odera has all our contacts, and she'll be able to connect you with us, or you can connect with us directly. We're here, we're chatting with you. Please keep hope alive. You are created for a purpose. This season will pass. This is not forever. And we're thankful to have you guys hanging out here with us today. God bless you.
Thank you, Julia. I'm going to have Praise, some 1 minute wrap up.
Okay, thank you guys. I really, really do appreciate not only being on this panel, but the fact that we have such a wonderful response. And that gives me hope that people like us are finally opening up to mental health, and we're finally looking for education on mental health issues and what we can do about it. So I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to you guys being a part of the future panels that we will have. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for what's to come. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'm gonna hand it over to Ruth. You're next on the next box.
Thank you, Lilian. I just wanted to say that I saw that there was a number of people who asked questions concerning children with disabilities, and I wanted to, and we will send this out, but I wanted to say two things. One, please practice grace. And for those of you who don't know what grace is giving or getting something that you do not deserve. So practice grace with yourself. Practice grace with your child, okay? So that's the very first thing I would say, is that these are, like they keep telling us, unprecedented times. So be kind to yourself and be kind to your children. Everybody is struggling through this. The other thing I wanted to say is that the Association of Psychological, let me see if I can pull it up real quickly. The American Psychological Association actually has on their website some advice for caregivers of children with disabilities in the era of COVID. We will send that link out, but they have some really good tips on there on what to do. And then lastly, I just want to say that I appreciate each and every one of you for coming. We are here, like Julia said, there's a bunch of us therapists. We are willing to see you if you need to be seen by a therapist. We care about you. We are Christian therapists, so we have that added bonus. And we really want to wish you good mental health. And beyond that, I want to wish you a very good Easter, when we can together just celebrate that salvation that God has given to us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ruth. And finally, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I want to thank everybody for coming. And let me just end on a personal note. A few years ago, my dad passed away, and in the morning, when we heard the news about all of that, my daughter came into the bedroom. We were on the phone, with people from home, and she found out that her grandfather had died, and so she asked, "Mommy, am I supposed to be sad forever?" Because she was very close with her grandfather. And I grabbed that opportunity to teach her how to go through grief and a loss, because we will all go through difficult times. So this is a time where you're going to teach your child how to go through stresses. You don't know what else they are going to go through with, in the future. This is just one. So how am I teaching my child how to go through a difficult situation? So what I told my daughter was, yes, and I was crying, and we were all crying, and we said, we be sad for a little bit and then we go on, because that's what grandpa would want for us. So now is the time for us to teach our children how to go through difficult times. We go through difficult times by knowing that we are not in this alone. There are lots of people we can reach out to, and there is the one most important person we can reach out to, and that's our Heavenly Father, who's always with us. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you so much. I want to appreciate everybody for showing up. I really, really want to appreciate my fellow panelists who responded when I reached out, and just was able to lend your expertise and your wisdom and your knowledge to responding to this. We are not, like Julia said, we don't know everything. There's just so many things we don't have expertise on, and it takes a village. It really takes a village, and we are that village. And so I'm getting a lot of messages on the chat box, and some of them personal messages that, wow, we need to do this again. And because there is a gap, there is a need. And that is why it's a long story to tell you how we got here, how I got to wanting to do this. But I just know that when God wants you to do something, he will press on you until you do it. And so I am lending myself, the panelists are available to help us sort through this. There are lots of questions we didn't get to that I would want still to address. And what I would want for us to do, thank you all for giving me your information. I have your emails. I promise not to sell it or to use it for other purposes. I will not stalk you on email and try to get you to buy my books or my music or anything. I will not do that. This is for the purpose of building the community. And so I do have your email. I will reach out to you. We will likely plan to have another panel. Somebody, I think Mosi just mentioned, we should take advantage of how we are confined due to COVID-19. We have to make the best of every situation. You can always be that ray of sunshine. You can always be that rainbow in the midst of the storm. So I'm hoping that we can have another panel like this, maybe once a month. We will reach out to you and let you know when the next one will be. Maybe sometime in May, we'll have another one. I will sort through the questions that have been sent in already that we were not able to respond to, and maybe we will have a themed webinar. And people can call in. There's a lot of other experts on the call. Some of you are putting your information out already, and we can do that. What I would encourage you to do is to submit questions that may not necessarily be related to this season, COVID-19 and the shelter in place, but they may just be mental health issues we have not addressed. All the topics we covered today, we barely scratched the surface. But if we could devote time to just focusing on one of those, and maybe take an hour and just have a discussion and give you resources about that, and maybe stagger it out. I don't know where God is taking us with this, but we can probably have another one. There are a lot of experts, so we may rotate some of the panelists so that we can have input from different providers in the community as well. If you know providers in your area, mental health providers that would also lend their expertise to this, you can message me and let me know, hey, so-and-so lives in my city, or this friend of mine And we're not limited because we're doing this online. You can give me a provider somewhere across the world. Some people on this panel are actually not in the US. There are people in Kenya, in the UK, and some people, I think somebody is from Kampala and everywhere. So just let me know where they are and we will work with their time zones and try and fit them in, and we can benefit from each other. So I will reach out to you about our next webinar. Submit questions. You can go to my website, lilianodera.com. I have a contact box. If you scroll all the way to my last page, the bottom, there's a contact box there. You can send questions through there, or you can just send them to me via email, and I'll compile those and we'll prepare for something soon. I will go ahead and, because people are asking where can we find all these resources in a collective place, is I'm going to create a Facebook page for us to have conversations. You can post questions. It can be a closed group. I actually would like a closed group so that if you want to submit questions and we can bring them to the webinar, whatever system works, I'm open to ideas of what would be beneficial. And I will create another network for providers because people keep popping up and saying there's somebody in my city here and there. I'll create a way for us to be able to communicate as providers as well. So those of you, I can see your names on the screen who are mental health providers, so we can connect offline and help each other in this process. This session has been recorded. I will post it, and you can be able to share it with other people in your network, other people in your system. And other than that, I think that's the last thing I wanted to say. I appreciate everybody for calling in today. Wishing everybody a wonderful Easter weekend, and take care of yourself, be safe. Remember, we are socially distancing, we're not socially isolating. Stay connected with your loved ones, keep in touch with people in a safe way, and God's in control. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.